Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the AI Spy. I hope you've caught up with all our past episodes. If you haven't, please do so. Also, subscribe so that you don't miss any of our updates. So, today we are diving into a very crucial but overlooked issue: the intersection of human trafficking, modern slavery, and online scams. We'll be exploring the rise of crime syndicates and scam syndicates in regions like Cambodia, and how people, victims of human trafficking, are being forced to work in these fraud factories. To help me unpack this topic, joining me today is Mina Chiang. She's founder of a Humanity Research Consultancy, an organization that fights modern slavery and human trafficking. Mina, it's so great to have you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting me.
So Mina, before we go into the topic, I always start my podcast by asking the guest about their origin stories. I mean, it's excellent that you're doing it, but what was your journey like? What led you to start HRC?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, actually, interestingly, my bachelor degree was in engineering. So initially, I thought my life is going to be more focused on science and join the high-tech industry. But actually, afterwards, when I was in my university, I was fortunately having some opportunity to go for international volunteer trips that really showed me the kind of poverty and all different kind of social issue that people still face in many parts of the world. So when I finished my bachelor degree, which I also did sociology and anthropology at the same time, I decided to pursue international development. And so after I finished my master degree, I realized that I really wanted to focus on something that can create real impact and can really change lives. A lot of social issues, it's still like in situations that knowledge is such a huge issue across the board. So I work as an independent consultant, and for the topic, I was very lucky to learn about, and I guess lucky and unlucky to learn about the human suffering of human trafficking and modern slavery. That really shocked me to the core. Like I didn't imagine in our world in 21st century that we still can see those really extreme violence and evil on the constant basis. So this is not like, a humanitarian situation that only pop out, on the certain context, but it's been continuously that our society still exists a group of people that being enslaved, that being exploited. And I just found that quite unacceptable, especially a lot of the time, people who being exploited, it's exactly because they are trying to get a better life, exactly because they are trying to work hard, and they ended up in a kind of false promises in a bad quote unquote job or position that are being exploited. So I really wanted to be part of that journey in combating this. And also, I am a person who's quite positive and hopeful, and I do feel that if the world puts enough emphasis, enough resources in our lifetime, we can see a significant reduce in the type of trafficking in person and modern slavery that we are seeing today. So that's the initial reason that made me want to contribute myself in the sector.
So Mina, you said whether you're lucky or unlucky. I can tell you that I think we are very lucky that you chose this path, and that some people like you are courageous enough to choose this path. Many like me, I also have a degree in engineering, and I chose the easy path to work in the technology and high tech industry. So thank you again for doing what you do, and the entire team at Humanity Research for working to help other victims. Now let's dive a little further into the topic. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, can you provide some insights into the connection between human trafficking and the rise of online scam operations?
When we first learned about this online scamming, it was really shocking because in a sense, like if you consider like modern slavery or human trafficking, like mainly it has two parts. One is in the supply chain, so producing, for example, chocolate, cotton, fish, whatever, like agricultural products, usually mainly that victims of the trafficking or forced labor has been subject to those conditions in producing the products. The other huge part is, for example, like sex trafficking. And maybe another sector, it's forced marriage. So usually females being forced to marry somebody that's not their choice, and that's also being considered as a type of modern slavery. But when we look at the scamming compound, we realize that this is more of a transnational criminal crime, that kind of a setting, that from day one the criminals didn't mean to produce something legal. It's not like producing cocoa chocolates. No, from day one they were using the victims to harm other people. It's part of the operation, a bit more similar to, for example, like drug trafficking, that you are producing something illegal from day one. But more so, the product itself, it's not like a kind of a drug. It's a service. It's exploitation to other people in order to get money, which is scam or fraud. And in the case of sex trafficking, for example, it's also like a lot of the time transnational criminal crime. But then for sex trafficking, a lot of the time those consumers or clients, they actively engage in the process. So like purchasing sex, for example. But then when it comes to scam, the people who are on the other side of the screen, they didn't want to contribute to the sufferings of victims who are being forced to conduct scam. Maybe just to give a bit more context. So what we are seeing is that hundreds of thousands of victims being brought into this type of offices, or we call compound, that being forced to work long hours, a lot of time being tortured, electrified, starved, to force them to work in front of a computer and to scam the rest of the victims around the world. So here I keep using the word victim, but what I mean like two different type. One is the forced labor. The other one is both people who lost their money to the criminals. So we are seeing that this is particularly dangerous operation, that nobody's gaining in the process, and this is outside the total kind of legality space, that the entire operation is problematic to also many layers. Especially the scale of it is quite concerning. So when it comes to forced criminality, we actually also do see that in sometimes a lot of time war zones, and or for example like children being forced to transport drugs. But the type of forced criminality that we are seeing in the scamming compound, it's another huge different level. As I mentioned, it's hundreds of thousands of people in Southeast Asia, including Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, Philippines, being forced into this type of operation. And the amount of money that's involved is billions and billions of US dollar. Actually, the UNODC analysis shows that one of the Asian country, the kind of illicit income through the online scamming is around half of the country's GDP. So that's the kind of mind-blowing amount of money that we're talking about here.
We hear a lot of articles, a lot of talk about the victims and the people who are losing money to these scams. And for a long period of time, I had no idea about the victims on the other side. I always used to see that these are professional fraudsters who are scamming people. But I think this was during one of your presentations that I learned about the victim on the other side, where people have been forced, and I saw some of the images that you shared, the way they are being tortured, the way the living conditions. So it was absolutely heartbreaking, and that was such a revelation for me, because I had never really thought about what the other side of the scam, or the other end of the scam would look like. I always thought that this is like a call center where people have white collar jobs, they're coming in and they're scamming people, and there are some of those. There are call centers in different parts of the world where fraudsters work, but some of the scam syndicates and the scam compounds that you spoke about in Cambodia, when I saw those pictures and I saw the conditions that they are subjected to, it's absolutely heartbreaking. So the scam compound is not just apartments where these the victims of human trafficking have been forced to work, to call people on the computers, but there's also a full ecosystem. So once they scam and receive the money, this money has to be laundered. So there are money laundering services. So, can you talk a little more about the ecosystem that has developed in these compounds, in this
Yeah.
scam?
Like trafficking, there could be all different kinds of ways to lure people in. And by the way, I want to also emphasize that there are indeed people who join the operation voluntarily. But even if they join voluntarily, doesn't mean that they were not subject to any violence towards the end. So it could be like somebody who, yes, like consider themselves as a fraudster, but then after they join operation, they quickly realize they really lose their freedom of movement, and then when they want to quit, when they want to leave, there's no way for them to leave. So it could also be that scenario. But anyway, so the first stage you may have different groups that's providing human beings, and you can actually see those advertisements even online. For example, on like Telegram groups, that there are lots of discussions about matching those jobs to individuals. And then afterwards, when it comes to scam, then of course you need lots of personal data around the world. So there are also professional vendors who specialize in selling, for example, American female age 30 to 40 their data, or for example, a set of airline companies customer data. So those data vendors, whatever reasons they got those data, that could be through leak from the companies or through like hacking into the systems, but there are also people professionally doing that. Then you also have, for example, like script writers that creates different stories to scam people's money. So today it could be, oh, your account being frozen, and the other day is, oh yeah, this like romance type of scam. So there's always new kind of scam techniques that scammers and fraudsters try to develop. So there are also services like that. Then of course you have people who are actually doing the scam. Then that could be, for example, when you want to do that, you need to in the conversation with the scam, the victim, you want to let them believe, oh yeah, you are actually let's say a Harvard graduate person, or you are actually earning like X amount of money, or you are the residents of a certain country. So all these you want to show screenshots. Then so there are also companies that particularly providing a service for you to produce those documents that looks like real but actually fake. So just in the whole process of scam, you see different kind of supply chain trying to fill in the gap. And then as you also indicate, scam is extremely lucrative. Then when you have those money, illicit money, you need to laundry those money. So criminals also another huge chunk of the industry that goes hand in hand with scam is money laundering industry. So again, like online, you can see lots of advertisements that people always asking for like purchasing bank account, like real bank account, because they need those bank account to be able to do money laundering. Or for example, they are purchasing different kind of financial infrastructures that's helping them to move the money through, let's say, cryptocurrencies. So it's a whole like ecosystems all together. And that's the scary part of it. And it's also, from what we can see, that it's a bit of even like normalization of what's going on, because a lot of time you can see something like extremely professional roles that are being opened up as well. So for example, let's say like coding professionals, they need that to join the scam operation. Or like basically any kind of elements you can imagine that's required in this whole process, that criminals are searching for lots of people. So unfortunately, we have also heard, let's say, some young teenagers who are from the region I just described, for example, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, the area. Some young people, they unfortunately even aspired to join this kind of operation, because they understand that this is a potential career opportunity for them. So they may not necessarily be, let's say, sitting on the kind of a scammer role, but they might be doing something that, say, create lots of bank account and fully aware that this is part of the chain to do the money laundering, in order to help the criminal to launder those illicit money. So yeah, this is what we are seeing now.
Thanks for explaining the entire ecosystem. Now, while you were explaining, and I was just thinking also about the recruitment. So, what are the tactics that these the scammers are using to recruit the victims to come and join these scam compounds?
Yeah, of course. I would say, like, so far, at least in Southeast Asia, the scamming compound, we see victim nationality ranging like kind of, almost to like 40 different countries. So that's like Chinese, Taiwanese, Southeast Asian countries, all the way to, for example, Africa, Latin America. I have also personally met 2 American victims who were in the compound as well. I mean, like, chatting with them before. So yeah, what I'm saying is that the recruitment method for people from different areas of the world can vary quite dramatically. So, for example, for Chinese victims, to go into the compound in Cambodia or Myanmar, a lot of time what we see is like it's through smuggling by land. So that can mean, people who, let's say from the villages, they genuinely don't know what's going on in the world. They maybe have never go abroad, but they just thought, okay, that's a good opportunity, let's go, and being lured to go through like smuggling process, crossing the borders without stamping on their passport. So that's one type that we have seen before. For example, Taiwan, I'm from Taiwan originally, then we can see like in around 2022, we see a lot of different type of recruitment style, including like alleged job. So they maybe telling you that this is a customer service job, this is a hotel management job, and actually going through rounds of interview. Like one survivor described that he went through 3 rounds of interview. That for him, it's really real. For him, it's just really a kind of professional recruitment process. But only until when he landed in Phnom Penh that he realized this is different from what he thought. We also previously saw that sometimes victims being brought in the compound, they may be being assigned into this quote-unquote human resource department, that they are being asked to recruit other people in. So what we will do is like reaching out to them, for example, high school classmates, university classmates, and telling them, hey, I'm having such a fantastic job in Myanmar. Come join me, like luxury lifestyle, wonderful. Mate, I know you have been suffering for years. Just come join me. So that's also particularly dangerous because when you were reached out by somebody that you trust in real life, you might actually believe that that's genuine. So we also saw this kind of recruitment. We also see, for example, recently we've been realizing that Dubai, for example, it's quite a recruitment hub, that a lot of victims we come across were recruited through Dubai. Either they were originally in Dubai and being sent to Southeast Asia, or like they were in their home country, let's say Uganda, Ethiopia, East Africa, and then go through Dubai because of some agencies in Dubai, and then send them to Southeast Asia, or actually be based in compounds in Dubai. So the recruitment ways varies, and we even heard, for example, some of them, the Westerners, the reason why they ended up in the compound was because they were just traveling in Southeast Asia. They were tourists, that they were doing their like other activity. They were already physically in the country, and then unfortunately being brought into the compound. So there could be all different kind of recruitment. And again, like, I want to emphasize, some people did join the compound voluntarily. I mean, to a certain degree voluntary. Like, they might have been knowing that this is some kind of shady industry, but then they still decided that, oh yeah, if I can get a cut out of it, then I can still be rich. So they joined, and then realized they don't really have the freedom, and the company accuse them to be in such a debt that they are basically kind of becoming the debt bondage situation. That what we are seeing is that a lot of company, they might create different excuse to tell their employees that since you're living in the compound, your accommodation, your food, it's covered by us, and therefore even though you have worked for 12 hours a day, you still owe us money. So a lot of victims, they describe that they still have a huge amount of debt that they have to pay back to the company. Otherwise, they could never leave, and they just have to work for free for years. That's what we are seeing.
So these crime compounds, or these scam compounds that are being set up, some of them are in special economic zones that have been designated or been built by the governments to help develop industries, help for economic development, but these are now being leased out by very rich individuals, and they're being used for. So can you talk about how they're repurposing some of these otherwise special economic zones to work as a crime compound?
Yeah, I think the best example is Laos Special Economic Zone. So Laos Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone. So in that area, it's around 10,000 acres. And then the criminal called Zhao Wei, he is already sanctioned by the U.S. government for his work in, animal trafficking, drug trafficking, and other type of illicit activities. So this guy Zhao Wei, he had a 99 years lease with the Laos government. So basically, in that area, it's like his own kingdom that he's able to set up new rules. And for people who go in and out of the areas, they also need to go through, for example, documentation check. Basically, a bit like going through a country border. So that's what we are seeing. That a lot of victims has described that there are lots of scamming and fraud operations in that special economic zones, but a lot of time that almost kind of normalized, and at the same time there are also other type of activities going on, not just scam and fraud, but sex trafficking, child pornography production, animal trafficking, other kind of issues all going together. So the special economic zones, we see that it's intended to help companies to grow. However, a lot of time it also means slightly more relaxed regulations, and a lot of time that really kind of brings in criminals that kind of explore that loopholes or that freedom, and making the situation quite problematic.
Right. So you've interacted with victims, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've also interacted with victims who want to move out or escape some of these crime compounds. So, what are some of the victim stories that you can say? Do they have connectivity to the internet, to a phone where they can reach out for help? Can they reach out to authorities even in their either in their home country or in the local country?
Yeah. So for victims who were being put on during this scam, one thing lucky is that they are able to use internet almost all the time. Of course, a lot of times under supervision of their manager criminal. So sometimes they need to find, for example, midnight or other time to reach out, but at least they will have the access to phones and computers very often. However, of course, for other victims who are, let's say, in the same compound, but then being put into like sex trafficking, sex work, then maybe they will not have this access. And we know that as a fact because many situations that we were not able to even know the conditions of other type of victims. Anyway, when the victims of they're being put on during scam and fraud reached out, in the very beginning they did usually always try to reach out to the local police officers, but what happened is a lot of time they realize just like hitting a wall, or for example other colleagues reach out to the police and then being transferred to other compounds or being resettled again instead of being rescued. Then they quickly realize that either to the very, very high level of corruption or like a local police station, that there is corruption going on, that reaching out to the authority most likely will not help them. And a lot of time also even their home countries authorities, so for example the embassies or the police in their home country are not really treating the case seriously. So as I mentioned, some people might be like smuggled in the country, so then a lot of time that their home country authority just basically kind of don't prioritize their victimhood, but only viewing them as, oh yeah, lawbreakers because you didn't enter these areas like legally. Or sometimes their embassies are not even, let's say in Cambodia or Myanmar or Laos or Thailand, these areas, their embassy just not there. So there's no way for them to ask for the help from their own embassies. I think it's also related to how the whole issue used to be not very much like defined and understood. So, for example, in Humanity Research Consultancy (HRC), when we started working on combating this type of trafficking, I still remember that at the time the Taiwanese government, they have been observing similar issues for a while, for several months, like Taiwanese going abroad and disappeared, or like reach out to say like they are locked and beaten in their quote unquote companies. And but what happened is Taiwanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they have a like statement basically just warning Taiwanese people like, oh, when you go abroad to search for a job, please be careful that there are cases people go into dispute with their employers, but never really treat this as like serious human trafficking issues. So that also is a reason why lots of time we see like authorities really downplay the whole seriousness of the issue. But I think since the whole media report and a bit more understanding in like 20, it has been slightly better. That a lot of time we do see authorities be more serious, and maybe there's also like extra resources in personnel or in funding that enables them to do a slightly better job. But even so, what we are seeing is that only individual like handful of victims usually will be rescued. But say, for example, one person reached out, and yes, the police went in to bring that person out, but then the entire operation of 100 people, 1,000 people still continues. And it's not likely to go anywhere. In fact, actually, I was in Cambodia just a few months ago, and then still you can see lots of buildings that are barred. So even from outside, you can see that the windows are barred. And one of the reasons that we understand is that to prevent people from jumping over of the window. And on the street, you can still see quite a lot of information that kind of indicates this criminal ecosystem. So rescue itself is quite frustrating because you're not able to really stopping the whole operation, but just only being able to bring one or two person out based on, for example, certain connection.
So even though there is information that is available with authorities, they've never taken any mass action to or action at scale to dismantle these operations. Like if we knew that there are one or two victims that are working in these scam compounds, that gives us indication that this is a scam compound, and why not just dismantle the whole thing?
Yeah, as I mentioned, corruption. Unfortunately, lots of the local authorities, again, from high level to low level, could be on the payroll of the criminals. So it's so pervasive that we again and again seeing that the system is trying to deny and trying to downplay and not really trying to solve the whole issue. This is true not just in Cambodia but also Myanmar and Laos, in Dubai. And by the way, also to notice the scale of it, as I mentioned, hundreds of thousands of people are in this kind of industry. So if you look at one
Right.
compound of like, let's say, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, how are you going to really stop it? I mean, how many police are you going to try to bring in to bring out all the people? I mean, actually, compounds in Myanmar, so that was quite serious. Like they basically bring police and armies that with guns and real weapon going in to raid several compounds. So they did, like brought back thousands of victims or criminals back to China. But even that, it's still just like small scale compared to
Right.
all sides of the operation. Yeah.
Yeah. um, and I think these operations are not concentrated; they're also distributed across three different multiple different countries. There are different regions, so it might that those might pose some of the challenge. I think in one of your talks you spoke about the education that the authorities sometimes, even when they get the complaint, then they rescue someone, the way to file a report, and they don't have the right training or education. So for example, if you rescue someone and file it as a human trafficking versus a normal crime, there are different penalties that are applicable. It's also to do with some level of outreach and education for the authorities.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, very much so. And the thing is, when it comes to human trafficking, forced labor, modern slavery. I think people tend to have very narrow imagination of what it looks like. Like when I show, for example, the most extreme type, people being beaten up and then their bodies like with bruise and with wounds, like wounded, and then yes, like people will understand. Oh no, this is unacceptable. However, there are many other scenarios also unacceptable. For example, when a person being locked in, or like not necessarily physically locked, but then being told that they are in debt and therefore they cannot leave, or being threatened, being like intimidated, and being asked to work for like a really long hours and starved. These are all situations that clearly to the professionals that this is forced labor and human trafficking. However, a lot of time the authorities, they really have a hard time to understand what are the conditions. So very often we see a situation that they just believe, oh yeah, this is a labor dispute. Like talk through with your employers. Oh yeah, why are you in debt? Maybe really you didn't do something right. So yeah, talk to your employers. Like keep pushing this back to the kind of employment contractual relationship, which it's not accurate. It's not an accurate way to look at this. So we do see that there's a very crucial role in awareness raising, and also in like really providing clear guidance to authorities, especially police officers, to be able to identify victims in a better way. Another thing to emphasize is that, so at the moment, when we think about government officials, they usually all have their own individual tasks. So, for example, let's say if you are in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, your role is to take care of your, let's say, like foreign citizenship, or like to build a relationship with that country. Or if you are police, normally the idea is like you need to solve crime, but never in anywhere that their priority is to protect the victim or to identify who is the victim. A lot of the time, that's just a kind of byproduct of their job, which is particularly problematic because then that's the reason why sometimes in the process victims and survivors rights, or their situations not being cared or centered, and particularly because the area that we're talking here, it's particularly in Southeast Asia, and we see that problems quite a lot. Even for example, when we started in 2022, at that time in Taiwan, the kind of a human trafficking prevention law in Taiwan only really imagine migrant workers can be victims of human trafficking, because yes, Taiwan used to be more like a destination country that lots of migrant workers coming here and unfortunately being exploited. However, when Taiwanese abroad being exploited, it's not so much well known. And so in 2022, it was quite initially, it was a bit difficult even for the prosecutors and police to realize, yeah, these are victims of human trafficking, and we need to find a space legally for them to have their rights. Yeah.
Thank you, Mina. And one thing I wanted to ask you earlier, but I forgot. I think in one of your presentations, you were talking about the change of patterns pre-COVID and post-COVID. So, can you highlight, has there been actually a shift post-COVID, or has it always been the same?
Yeah, this is a good question as well. So, the type of criminal activity that we are looking here are mainly kind of organized and operated by Chinese-speaking criminals. So Chinese-speaking, including China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, or for example, they are like Burmese, but then ethnically having like Chinese roots, so they are able to speak Chinese. So what we are seeing here, it's a kind of a predominantly Chinese-speaking criminal organization. I mean, not one, but multiple like organized groups. So before COVID, it used to be those criminal groups, they will bring Chinese victims or Chinese scammers and to scam people in China, or to scam, for example, Chinese speakers in other countries outside China. But this is a very much kind of, if you use language as kind of a drawing a line, that it doesn't really cross that much to English or other languages. However, during COVID, what we realized is that because of the border control, criminals, they had a hard time to bring more Chinese laborers into Southeast Asia. So they start bringing in victims from other nationalities and also start diversifying to the rest of the world. So we do see a change, and with a change, really have to kind of distill to one point. I think is internet more becoming much more like internationally, much more global, beyond the border, and that's also the reason why it's not getting much more attention. I want to also emphasize, by the way, like scamming or like a fraud, it's such a universal issue that definitely beyond Chinese criminal groups, there are, for example, Indian groups, North European groups, there are different groups, but the one that we are discussing here, particularly we are seeing at HRC, it's Chinese speaking criminals. So yeah, like actually even, as I mentioned, last year, there was some crackdown done by the Chinese authority in Myanmar, and that also kind of sending a signal to the criminal that they should try to scam less that is related to China. But if they are trying to scam foreigners of other nationalities, different languages, most likely that they will be okay. Like less people may create accountabilities for them. And we actually heard that directly from, for example, frontline rescuer, victims, and also even some people who are like, just that there are multiple sources pointing out that the criminals are kind of striving to scan more English speakers.
Mina, thank you so much. I've taken quite a lot of your time today afternoon already, and thank you so much for joining and sharing all your insights. So, Mina, if someone wants to get in touch with you, can they get in touch with you? If one of our listeners can they get in touch with you on LinkedIn? We'll share your LinkedIn profile in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. Welcome to reach out. We are always very much happy to connect to different partners who are working on stopping the criminals, either on the trafficking side or even on the scam side.
Mina, thanks again for joining, and listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of the AI Spy. We'll be back again in a few weeks with another A-lister, with another topic and very thought-provoking discussions. Please subscribe to the channel and share with your friends, with your colleagues, with your families. Until then, until the next episode, stay safe and stay vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you.